Hello, this is Sarah Brash. Welcome back to my channel. So, I want to talk in this video about Yale's psychology department and how they really need to shudder themselves in abject shame for what they did to me after the Living or Not Being While Black hate crime hoax at Yale. So, I had very close ties to the psychology department at Yale. I was actually attempting to pursue the dual degree program, PhD program in philosophy and psychology. And I wanted to do an empirical social psychological study on the nature of authority, the nature of legitimacy, and the nature of the relationship between authority and legitimacy. And that's why I became an advisee of Tom Tyler, a social psychologist. I believe he had a primary appointment in Yale Law School and a secondary appointment in the psychology department at Yale. He's, as I've already discussed in other videos and blog posts, he's the father of procedural justice. He was a co-director of the Justice Collaboratory with Tracy Mears, both of whom were on Barack Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force. The Justice Collaboratory works specifically and explicitly on implicit bias and racism in policing and police brutality. And I became an advisee of Tom Tyler. He loved my project. I was designing the study when the hate crime hoax at Yale happened in the spring of 2018. So I just want to make that very clear. So I had that very strong connection through Tom Tyler with the psychology department at Yale. And also, everyone else in the psychology department at Yale also knew me. David Rand, I believe he was like Tom Tyler. I believe he had dual appointments, one in the Yale Law School, one in the psychology department at Yale, and then he also, I believe, had a tertiary appointment in the School of Management, I believe, at Yale. And anyway, so David Rand, as I've mentioned in other videos, taught me computational agent-based modeling in MATLAB, and he's the one who introduced me to Daria Roithmeyer in the spring of 2018, the USC Law School professor that I just did a video about, the one who grossly defamed me, and she was a visiting professor at Yale Law School in spring 2018. So that was another very strong connection I had to the psychology department. Now, I also took statistics in psychology at Yale with Jack Dovidio, who's a very famous psychologist. So if you're in psychology, you definitely know the name Jack Dovidio. He taught me statistics. I took his statistics class, and I took it with Brian Earp, who is becoming a pretty famous, philosopher slash psychologist himself. He was in my statistics class with Jack Dovidio, and Brian Earp has a pretty substantial presence on social media, in particular Twitter, and a pretty substantial following. So Jack Dovidio adored me. Jack Dovidio loved me. And he loved my final project that I did for him in statistics at Yale. And my final project was an analysis of some of the empirical data that I had generated when I went out to the ghettoized, predominantly Muslim immigrant communities around Paris, and spoke, did a survey and spoke with the women and girls of those communities about their access to sexual and reproductive health care and rights. And I found statistically significant results. I was particularly interested in the question of whether, young women were using the morning after pill, emergency contraception, etc., as a primary form of birth control because it was easier to hide from their families than oral contraceptives that you take every day. Was harder to hide from their families, and I found statistically significant results that this is in fact the case. So I was thrilled about that. That was my final project that I did for Jack Dovidio in the statistics class that I took with him in the psychology department at Yale University. So that's another close connection I had to the psychology department at Yale University. Moreover, Paul Bloom, a very famous psychologist at Yale University, he was helping me. He was helping me try to get into the dual PhD program in philosophy and psychology at Yale. So everyone in the psychology department at Yale knew me. And so I just want to make very clear, I've already talked about how Tom Tyler initially was supportive of me and wrote a character letter on my behalf for Yale General Counsel, but subsequently he threw me over, presumably at the behest of Tracy Mears of the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School, because I had been publicly denouncing Veshla Weaver, a Johns Hopkins professor who used to be at Yale, who is a close friend and collaborator with Tracy Mears, who is still a member of the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School. So I just want to make this, the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because I want you to know that not one of them lifted a finger to help me after the Living or Napping While Black hate crime hoax at Yale. Not one of them. Not one of them. I'll do a little more digging. I don't believe that any of those persons explicitly and specifically defamed me on social media or elsewhere. Perhaps in private they did so, but in private conversations with people they did so. But I am not aware that any of them actually defamed me on social media or elsewhere after the hate crime hoax at Yale. But not one of them lifted a finger to help me, and they 100% knew that I was an innocent anti-racism Yale grad student and civil rights attorney. And they were perfectly happy to sit back and watch an innocent almost die and do absolutely nothing. And this is another video that I wanted to do to explain my basis for saying that virtually everyone who participated in the witch hunt at Yale, especially from academia, from the fake news press, from the moral outrage industry like ACLU, from Hollywood, everyone knew me. Everyone knew me. Everyone knew that I was an innocent anti-racism Yale grad student and civil rights attorney who had never done anything racist in her life and never would do anything racist in her life. And all of this was extremely well documented, and I have a very uncommon name, and it's very easy to Google this information about me. Not one of these persons who 100% knew I was innocent lifted a finger to help me. And I also knew John Jost, who's a psychologist. I believe, is he at NYU also? I believe he's also at NYU with John Haidt. And also I want to make this clear that I have never met John Haidt, but I do not believe for 1 second that he was unaware of the fact that I was a completely innocent anti-racism Yale grad student. There's no way that he didn't know who I was. There's no way that he didn't know that I was innocent. There's no way that he didn't know he was lying about me and defaming me and probably driving me to suicide and probably inciting my murder and destroying my human and civil rights, academic and legal careers when he used his fall 2018 book tour for the Coddling with Greg Lukianoff of the Fire Org to defame me and as guilty of racial harassment at Yale during the Living or Napping While Black hate crime hoax at Yale. He 100% knew who I was. Now, what was he trying to do? What was John Haidt trying to do? I'll do another video about this. I don't want this to get too long. But I have some ideas about why John Haidt chose to do what he did and why he chooses to continue the smear campaign he's running against me behind the scenes to prevent me from saving my life and human and civil rights career. But I just want to explain that the Yale Psychology Department should shudder itself in abject shame for what they did to me, for what they didn't do for me. And I want to make clear that everyone, or virtually everyone, 100% knew who I was, knew I was innocent, knew they were lying about me, knew that they were probably driving me to suicide. And these are psychologists. These are psychologists. So don't tell me they don't understand the impact of being mobbed to suicide on Twitter, on social media, on Facebook. They understand the impact. They understand what it means. Anyway, so that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. I'll do another video specifically about John Haidt and his disgusting behavior towards me that continues to this day. All right, I'll have all of my fundraising links below. I love you all so much. Okay, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.